The emergency broadcast pierced through the silence at 3:47 a.m. Martial law declared, all citizens ordered to shelter in place. But when Sarah Chen, a junior Pentagon communications officer, cross-referenced the authorization codes, her blood ran cold. The numbers didn't match. Someone had just attempted a military coup using fake orders, and she was the only one who knew. Sarah Chen's fingers trembled as she stared at the glowing screen in the Pentagon's Situation Room. The emergency alert had woken half the country, but something was wrong, terribly wrong. "This can't be right," she whispered, pulling up the classified database. The martial law order bore General Morrison's digital signature, but the authorization sequence was off by 3 digits. After 2 years of processing military communications, she knew those codes like her own birthday. Her supervisor, Colonel Hayes, stormed into the room, his uniform hastily thrown on. "Chen, what's the status on the emergency broadcast?" "Sir, I think we have a problem." Sarah's voice cracked. "The authorization codes don't match our records. This order, it's not legitimate." Hayes frowned, moving behind her workstation. "That's impossible. I received the order directly from General Morrison's office 20 minutes ago. But look at this." Sarah pulled up 2 windows side by side. The real authorization sequence ends in 847. This one ends in 184. Someone's using fake credentials. The colonel's face went pale. Outside, sirens wailed across Washington, D.C. as military vehicles rolled through empty streets, enforcing the fraudulent lockdown. "Jesus Christ," Hayes muttered. "If you're right, someone just staged a coup attempt using our own communication systems." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "Military blocking all roads." "What's happening, sir?" "We need to alert the Joint Chiefs immediately," Sarah said, but Hayes was already reaching for the secure phone. "I'm calling General Morrison directly." Hayes dialed, waited, then his expression darkened. No answer. Straight to voicemail. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. What if they got to him first? Before Hayes could respond, the door burst open. 3 men in military fatigues entered, but Sarah noticed immediately their insignia were wrong. Rangers didn't have jurisdiction in the Pentagon. "Colonel Hayes, Ms. Chen," the lead figure said, his voice eerily calm, "you're needed in Conference Room Alpha." Immediately, Hayes stepped protectively in front of Sarah, on whose authority. "General, Morrison's direct orders," the man replied, but Sarah caught the telltale pause, the micro-expression that screamed deception. "I'll need to verify that," Hayes said firmly. The lead soldier's hand moved toward his sidearm. "I'm afraid that's not possible, sir. Please come with us now." Sarah's heart hammered. These weren't real soldiers, they were the coup plotters, and now they knew she'd discovered their scheme. "Actually," she said, stepping forward with false confidence, "I just finished processing the general's updated orders. The communication blackout has been lifted." The fake soldier's eyes narrowed. "What orders?" "The ones that came through 2 minutes ago." Sarah lied smoothly, rescinding the martial law declaration due to administrative errors. She watched his face carefully. If these were legitimate military personnel, they'd have received the same communication. But his confused expression confirmed her worst fears. "There were no updated orders," he said slowly. "Then you're not on the official communication loop," Hayes interjected, catching on to Sarah's gambit. "Which means you're not authorized to be in this facility." The tension in the room exploded. The lead man drew his weapon. "Both of you, move. Now." But Sarah had already triggered the silent alarm under her desk. Somewhere in the building, real security forces were mobilizing. "You made a mistake," she said defiantly, "using fake authorization codes. I've been processing military communications for 2 years, and your forgery is amateur hour." The man's face twisted with anger. "You should have minded your own business. Protecting our democracy is my business." Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway, multiple sets, moving fast. The fake soldiers exchanged nervous glances. "Security breach in Situation Room 7, Hayes called out loudly. Armed intruders with falsified credentials, the lead intruder cursed and spoke rapidly into his radio. "Alpha Team, we're blown. Execute contingency plan." Sarah's blood ran cold. Contingency plan meant this conspiracy went deeper than 3 men with fake uniforms. "What contingency plan?" she demanded. The man smiled coldly. "Phase 2, Since we can't control the narrative from inside, we'll create a crisis that forces the real military to implement martial law. Through the reinforced windows, Sarah could see military vehicles positioning around the Pentagon. But now she realized they weren't there to protect. They were there to contain. The authentic security forces burst through the door, but the fake soldiers had vanished through a service exit Sarah didn't even know existed. Colonel Hayes, Ms. Chen, the security chief, called out, "Are you injured?" "No, but we have a massive problem," Hayes replied. "Someone just attempted to stage a coup using falsified military orders, and they're not finished." Sarah stared at the emergency broadcast, still running on every screen. Across America, people were huddled in their homes, believing their own military had turned against them. The social fabric was tearing apart in real time. "We need to contact the real National Guard commanders," she said urgently. If these conspirators triggered their Phase 2, legitimate military leaders might implement actual martial law to restore order. Hayes nodded grimly, which would make their fake coup a real one. The security chief's radio crackled to life. Multiple explosions reported at federal buildings in 7 major cities. Casualties unknown. Sarah's heart sank. Phase 2 had begun, and America was about to tear itself apart unless she could prove the truth before it was too late. The Pentagon's command center erupted into controlled chaos as reports flooded in from across the country. Federal buildings in New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Denver, Seattle, Phoenix, and Dallas had been hit simultaneously with coordinated explosions. Sarah watched the incoming intelligence with growing horror. "They're brilliant," she whispered to Colonel Hayes. "Create enough chaos that legitimate military leaders will demand real martial law to restore order." Turning their failed coup into a successful one, Hayes agreed grimly. "But we have proof. The original orders were fake." "Proof? That won't matter if the country's burning," Sarah shot back, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I need to reach the real National Guard commanders before they fall for this trap." General Patricia Vance, the Pentagon's Deputy Chief of Staff, strode into the command center, her silver hair pulled back severely. "Someone explain to me how fake military orders got broadcast to every American device." Hayes stepped forward. "Ma'am, Specialist Chen discovered the authorization codes were fraudulent. We believe a coordinated group infiltrated our communication systems." "Infiltrated?" General Vance's eyes flashed dangerously. "Our systems are supposedly impenetrable." Sarah looked up from her workstation. "General, with respect, they didn't break in, they had inside access." The fake authorization codes were generated using legitimate Pentagon protocols, just with incorrect sequence numbers. The implications hit the room like a physical blow. This wasn't an external attack. Someone inside the Pentagon was part of the conspiracy. "Ma'am," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving multiple requests from state National Guard commanders asking for confirmation of martial law orders." "At least they're asking," Sarah muttered, then louder, "General, I need authorization to contact Guard commanders directly. If they implement martial law in response to these attacks, they'll be playing right into the conspirators' hands." General Vance studied Sarah intently. "You're absolutely certain the original orders were falsified?" 100%. Sarah pulled up the evidence on the main screen. "Look at this authentication sequence. Every legitimate Pentagon order follows a specific algorithm based on timestamp, classification level, and originating office. This sequence is close, but mathematically impossible. Close enough to fool most people," Hayes added. "But Specialist Chen has an unusual talent for pattern recognition." Before General Vance could respond, every screen in the command center went black. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the room in red. "We're under cyber attack," the IT security chief announced. "Someone's attempting to lock us out of our own communication systems." Sarah's laptop remained functional she'd automatically. Switched to backup power and isolated networks the moment she'd discovered the fake orders. Years of paranoia about system failures had just saved their only connection to the outside world. "I can still reach the Guard commanders," she said, "but not for long." "Do it," General Vance ordered. "Hayes, get me a secure line to the White House." If the president implements the Insurrection Act based on these attacks, she didn't need to finish. If the president activated federal troops to restore order, the conspiracy would achieve its goal through legitimate channels. Sarah began contacting National Guard commanders across the country, starting with the states, where federal buildings had been attacked. Her first call connected to Brigadier General Robert Torres in Texas. General Torres, this is Pentagon Communications. Do not repeat, do not implement martial law orders received earlier tonight. They are fraudulent. Pentagon Communications. Torres sounded skeptical. How do I know you're legitimate? Sarah rattled off Torres's personal service record, including classified details only someone with high-level access could know. General, check the authorization codes on those orders. Sequence 847, not 184. The fake orders will show 184. A pause. Jesus Christ, you're right. The sequence is wrong. Who the hell is behind this? We're still investigating, but General Torres' explosions tonight are designed to make you think martial law is necessary. Don't fall for it. Too late, replied grimly. I've already got 3 regiments mobilizing. Governors screaming for order restored. Sarah's heart sank, but then she had an idea. General, what if instead of martial law, you deployed your forces to protect federal facilities and investigate the explosions? Publicly announce you're hunting the real terrorists. That ... could work. Maintain order without surrendering civilian authority. Exactly, and General. Start questioning any personnel who pushed hardest for immediate martial law implementation. The conspirators need inside help. As Sarah ended the call, she noticed something troubling on her secondary monitor. The Pentagon's internal communication logs showed someone had been monitoring her calls in real time. Colonel Hayes, she called out urgently, we have a bigger problem. Someone inside this building is tracking everything we do. Hayes looked up from his conversation with General Vance. What do you mean? Look at this. Sarah displayed the access logs. Every call I've made, every database I've accessed someone with high-level clearance has been shadowing my activities. General Vance approached Sarah's workstation, her expression darkening as she reviewed the evidence. These access logs show administrative-level clearance. That's maybe 20 people in the entire Pentagon, one of whom is standing in this room right now, Sarah said quietly. The command center fell silent. Sarah realized she'd just accused someone present of treason, but the evidence was undeniable. The monitoring started the moment I discovered the fake authorization codes, she continued. Someone's been watching, waiting to see how much we'd figure out. General Vance's voice was ice cold. Everyone in this room, place your devices on the table now. As phones and tablets were reluctantly produced, Sarah noticed the IT security chief hesitate before placing his device down. Their eyes met for a split second, and she saw something that made her blood freeze recognition and fear. Chief Brennan, she said slowly, your device is still showing active connection to the monitoring system. Brennan's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Colonel Hayes was faster, tackling him to the ground before he could draw. You son of a bitch, Hayes growled, restraining the IT chief. How long have you been selling us out? As General Vance secured Brennan's weapon, Sarah accessed his device. What she found made her stomach turn. He's been feeding information to the conspiracy for months, she announced. Communications, protocols, security procedures, personnel schedules. They knew exactly how to forge our orders because he gave them the templates. Brennan looked up from the floor, his face twisted with defiance. You think stopping me changes anything? Phase 2 is already in motion. By morning, this country will be under military rule one way or another. What's Phase 2? General Vance demanded. Brennan smiled coldly. You'll find out soon enough. But Sarah was already pulling up emergency alerts from across the country. What she saw made her heart stop. General, she said, her voice barely a whisper, they're not just targeting federal buildings. Look at this. On her screen, reports were flooding in of simultaneous attacks on power grids, water treatment facilities, and communication towers in 12 major metropolitan areas. The conspiracy wasn't just trying to justify martial law, they were creating a genuine national emergency that would make military intervention unavoidable. They're forcing our hand, General Vance said grimly. Create enough chaos, and legitimate authorities will have no choice but to implement martial law to prevent complete societal collapse. Sarah stared at the cascading crisis reports, then, At Brennan's smug expression, in the distance, she could hear helicopters approaching the Pentagon, but she no longer knew if they carried friends or enemies. The real test was just beginning. The helicopters circling the Pentagon weren't military, they were news crews, broadcasting live footage of what appeared to be a massive government complex under siege. Sarah realized with growing horror that the conspirators had orchestrated the perfect optics, make it look like the Pentagon itself was compromised. "They're controlling the narrative," she said, watching the news feeds on her monitor. "Every major network is reporting that the Pentagon may be under terrorist control." General Vance cursed as she monitored military communications. National Guard commanders across the country are requesting immediate authorization to implement martial law. They think we're the ones under attack. Sarah's phone rang her personal cell, not the secure Pentagon line. The caller ID showed her brother Marcus, an investigative journalist in Chicago. "Sarah, thank God you answered." "Marcus," said his voice tight with fear. "Something's not right about these attacks. I'm at the federal building here, and the damage patterns are all wrong." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, putting the call on speaker. "Professional demolition, not terrorist bombs. These buildings were brought down by experts who knew exactly how to create maximum visual impact with minimal structural damage. Like they wanted destruction that looked devastating on camera, but could be quickly rebuilt." Sarah's mind raced. "Marcus, are there any casualties?" "That's the weird part. The buildings were almost empty. Someone called in bomb threats 90 minutes before the explosions, giving everyone time to evacuate." What kind of terrorist warns their targets? The kind trying to create chaos without mass murder, Sarah realized. The conspirators needed martial law, not a war crimes tribunal. "Marcus, I need you to broadcast something," Sarah said urgently. "Tell your network that the Pentagon is operational and the martial law orders from tonight were fraudulent. Use my name as your source." "Sarah, what the hell is going on?" Before she could answer, Chief Brennan, still restrained on the floor, started laughing. "Too late," he said. "Phase 3 launches in 10 minutes. There's a Phase 3, Colonel Hayes demanded. Sarah accessed Brennan's confiscated device, her fingers flying across the screen. What she found made her blood run cold. "They're going to stage an attack on the White House," she announced. "Make it look like the Pentagon's been compromised and is now turning on civilian leadership." General Vance grabbed the secure phone. "I need the Secret Service now." But Sarah was already discovering the full scope of the conspiracy. "General, it's worse than that. Look at this communication log. They have people inside the Secret Service, FBI, and at least 3 National Guard units." The room fell silent. As the implications sank in, this wasn't just a military coup, it was a complete infiltration of America's security apparatus. "How do we stop something this big?" Hayes asked. Sarah stared at the evidence on her screen, then at her brother, still on the phone. Suddenly, she knew what to do. "Marcus, are you still there?" "Still here, sis. I need you to do something that might save the country. Can you get me live television coverage in the next 5 minutes?" "Sarah, what are you planning?" "I'm going to tell America the truth. All of it." General Vance looked at her sharply. "Specialist Chen, you're talking about revealing classified information on national television." "Ma'am, with respect, the classification system doesn't matter if there's no democracy left to protect." Sarah began uploading files to a secure server her brother could access. "Marcus, I'm sending you everything. The fake authorization codes, the evidence of inside collaboration, the planned attack on the White House, all of it." "Sarah, this is ... This is bigger than Watergate. It's bigger than anything in American history," she replied. "And in 8 minutes, they're going to make their final move." On her monitor, Sarah watched military vehicles positioning around the White House. But now she could distinguish between legitimate security forces and the conspiracy's assets based on their positioning patterns and communication frequencies. "General Vance," she said, "I can identify which units around the White House are compromised. But you need to contact the legitimate commanders immediately." As General Vance coordinated with loyal military leaders, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop now, or your family pays the price." Her blood turned to ice. They had threatened her family, but then another message arrived, this one from her roommate, FBI agents just arrived. They say they're protecting me on your orders. Sarah looked at Colonel Hayes in confusion. Sir, I didn't arrange FBI protection for my roommate. Hayes smiled grimly. I did, about an hour ago. Figured anyone smart enough to catch this conspiracy would be smart enough to become a target. On the main screen, Marcus appeared on CNN, broadcasting from Chicago. This is Marcus Chen with breaking news. My sister, Sarah Chen, is a Pentagon communications specialist who has uncovered evidence of a massive conspiracy to stage a military coup in the United States. Sarah watched as her brother methodically presented the evidence she'd sent him: the fake authorization codes, the coordination with the building attacks, the planned assault on the White House. The martial law orders broadcast tonight were completely fraudulent, Marcus continued. The real Pentagon is operational, and the attacks on federal buildings were staged by the same group attempting to seize control of our government. Across the country, Sarah could see the narrative shifting in real time. National Guard commanders began standing down from martial law preparations. News networks started questioning the official story about the attacks. But on her tactical display, the assault teams around the White House were still moving into position. They're not stopping, she announced. Even with the truth exposed, they're going ahead with Phase 3. General Vance was coordinating frantically with Secret Service and loyal military units. Legitimate security forces are moving to intercept, but it's going to be close. Sarah watched the tactical display as two groups of armed personnel converged on the White House grounds, one trying to protect the president, one trying to stage a fake attack that would justify their coup. Her phone rang again. This time it was Director Catherine Walsh of the FBI. Ms. Chen, this is Director Walsh. Thanks to your evidence and your brother's broadcast, we've identified over 40 conspirators across multiple agencies. We're making arrests now. Director Walsh, what about the White House? Secret Service? Has the situation contained? The fake assault team walked into a trap. We were waiting for them. Sarah slumped in her chair, exhaustion finally hitting her. Around the command center, personnel were coordinating the massive cleanup operation that would be needed to restore public trust. Specialist Chen General Vance said, approaching her workstation, "You may have just saved American democracy." Sarah looked up, still processing everything that had happened. "Ma'am, I just did my job. I process communications and check authorization codes." "No," General Vance replied firmly. "You did something much more important. You refused to let someone else define reality for you." On the main screen, news reports were showing arrests taking place across the country. The conspiracy was unraveling rapidly as each captured member revealed more of the network. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her roommate. "FBI agents say, you're a hero. Is that true?" She looked around the command center where analysts were working to identify every person who had been part of the plot, every system that had been compromised, every lie that had been told to the American people. Then she typed back, "I just refuse to believe fake numbers." Turns out, that was enough. As dawn broke over Washington, D.C., Sarah Chen sat at her workstation, helping to rebuild the communication systems that would restore America's faith in its own government. She had started the night as a junior Pentagon analyst processing routine communications. She ended it as the woman who had stopped a coup with nothing more than pattern recognition and an unwillingness to accept that wrong numbers could somehow be right. Sometimes, Sarah realized, saving democracy was as simple as refusing to believe a lie when everyone else wanted to believe it was true.